Hey there. So today I'm going to review your essay. So let's quickly get started. So there are 4 pages that I try to collect all of them, and if some of them is missing, just remind me. So it starts with an essay as a guesser. Some people estimate that all university students should study whatever they like. So whatever they like. So like is a very primitive vocabulary which should be replaced. For example, I can give you an example about the synonyms like adore or admire. However, you can also think of the different options as well. Others, others, because now we're talking about the opponents. Others with plural consider that they have to be only allowed. They only have to be allowed. So I will choose the place of it here, and we are allowed to start to choose subjects that will be useful in the future. For example, so in the real examination, we write it in the full form, never contract the words in the academic essays. All right. So, for example, subjects, subject related, subject related to science and technology. Well, what do you mean? What do you want to mean with this? To study to choose subjects that will be useful. Let's say the subject that is related to science and technology. So what? Okay, for example, it's an example of the previous sentence, but as you can remember, generally in the introduction part, we provide only the introductory key, right? No reason, no example, no any supporting detail. All those supporting details should be left to the body paragraphs. In their angle, each side has, so we say has, every and each is a single noun. Each side has strong purposes for defending their side. So, so for the defend their stance. Right? So try not to repeat the same words in the IELTS exam. One group of people propose that, so you can write on the one hand, okay, let's say people proposing this idea, let's say consider that or state that, indicate that, blah, blah, blah. Okay, you can use it this style. Uh, should be selected based on students' opts. What do you mean by opts? You mean options or decisions? So opt is a verb. Therefore, you have to use it in the proper way. So they believe that if students learn subjects which they are interested in, then the result of education will be excellent. In their point, to achieve something by forcing, okay, we need to put here comma in order to increase the fluency. To achieve something by forcing, by force, it's rated by force, is impossible. It's undeniable. So we never contract the words. Probably you have to watch the previous videos as well. It is undeniable that everyone's preferences must be respected. But again, uh, let's write here, never start the sentence with and, but, because, and so. And instead of but, in this case, we would say yet, or however, or nevertheless. A selection of subject by student, the selection, because we're talking about the specific selection by student, okay, by student would cause some downsides. Sometimes students avoid learning complicated issues because, so again, no and, but, so because in the beginning of the sentence, instead, we could, with not a level, not a capital letter, because of difficulties of essential subject student would prefer which student, and a student would prefer easy ones. Incidentally, rates of education would diminish. The rates of the amount, the number. On the other hand, let's say, on the other hand, some people propose that students, so you can say that these are the opposite side by saying on the contrary, or let's say the opponents state that, okay, or according to the opposition. So you say some people say like this and some people say like this. So it's not the kind of report. Instead, you're just trying to make an argument. In this case, who are the defendant, who are the other side or the opponents, you have to state it clearly. Some people propose that a student, because we're talking about general situation, a student should be permitted to pick useful subject. To pick a useful subject, but still pick is informal vocabulary, which should be replaced by select or choose or opt for. Useful subject. In their view, useless subject must be deprived from education system. However, however, the general pretty common, keep in mind. Some of them are much more essential. Other subjects uh, are notable too. Are much more essential. Other subjects are notable too. So what's the function of however here? Are you making the contrast? However, some of them are much more essential. So you are making a contrast between the previous statement and them, and then you're saying other subjects are notable too. So it's just making it a little bit intricate to be understood. Therefore, you need to be clear that whatever you want to state. It is possible that some of them have weak connections, have either a weak connection. So we can generalize the situation in two ways. One of which is adding, let's say, indefinite article, and the other way is pluralization, that we make the noun plural. A weak connection with students' vocation. Undoubtedly, again, comma, universities and teachers should instruct students by appropriate, let's say, with appropriate advice. They must explain merits and drawbacks. And merits and drawbacks, they're not matching with each other, so they're not collocations. So we can say either benefits and drawbacks or merits and demerits, right? Or advantages versus disadvantages, upsides versus downsides. They also have to motivate students to choose much more challenging and arduous subject. Choose, let's say, if we generalize, then let's pluralize it, subjects. But forcing them to select subjects makes them unwilling on education. Not on, I would say, to proceed education, to pursue education. Suppose that both sides should be used in education process. Universities should abolish which subject? That subject is that which has few relations with occupation. Organizing courses besides lesson about subject which is unnecessary but interesting for students can create satisfactory outcome. So organizing courses. So one thing to be made sure is that whenever we write the conclusion part, we need to use the word conclusion or conclude, okay? So you can start like this, to conclude, or in conclusion. And organizing courses besides lesson about subject which is unnecessary, but interesting for student can create satisfactory outcome. Okay, now we have the task 1. The tables will present information about sales, about the sales of fair trade labeled coffee and bananas. The tables compare ranges in 1999 and 2004 in 5 European countries. Amounts are demonstrated in euro. So as might be or might also be appropriate here, but in euro, I feel like that it should be in euro. According to the first schedule, so we always say according to something. According to the first schedule, the highest proportion of coffee sales belongs to UK in both years. The amount reached to 20 million what? Tons or something. So we need to use here the type of planet and what kind of qualifier that we're using here. 20 million tons or whatsoever, I don't know. Let's write in parentheses tons. In 2004. So it's against British spelling. In contrast to 1999, it was great growth. So just pay heed to which specific vocabulary and collocation can be used with the growth or with any other word from the task 1 document. The number of sales in Switzerland was 50% higher in 2004 than 1999. It became 6 million euros in 2004. Euros, right? It's plural. And sales figures of Denmark and Sweden slightly boomed in proportion to other countries. For second table, let's say reviewing the second table. Second table, despite UK was. So after despite, we generally use either gerund or the noun expression. So in this case, we can say despite UK being at the top of the at first table. Okay? So UK being, or we can say despite the fact that. If we add despite the fact that, then UK was at the top at the first table, might be suitable. Okay. After the fact that, you can use the normal sentence structure. Switzerland reached the top of 14 euro above banana sales. Let's say in banana sales, okay, to the top of banana sales with 14 to 47 millions of million euros. Okay. So increment was observed from 1 to 5.5 in UK. Let's write here an increment. The table draws a distinction among other countries and Sweden and Denmark. Unlike other countries, decrease was observed. A decrease was observed from 1.8 to 1 and 2.2 from 0.9 in both countries, without the above. So Switzerland and UK was no. Because of and, now we have 2 countries here, which means we should use here plural form of being in the past tense were the top of statistics in comparison with others. In addition, other 3 countries, so the other 3 countries were in competition with one another. Sweden had an invisible rise in either table. Okay, it's a little bit better than the first one. Again, we have an essay. So it's important. So yeah, actually it's important that try not to use the contractions. All right. There's no contraction like this. It doesn't, we don't use it in the academic statements. Instead, we can use the full form. It is important for children to learn the difference between right and wrong at no age. Again, the same issue, it is. So it's necessary for making, so it's the same structure that you use. It's important for someone to do something. It is necessary for, so you just choose, replace the important with necessary, but the structure is still the same. And in this way, you do not demonstrate your proficiency level to the examiner. Instead, we're just claiming that this is what I will know. Therefore, try to diversify your grammatical structure. Confusing right and wrong will be a major factor. In failures which cause negative results or adverse impact. Many methods are offered as teaching ways or methodology as a teaching methodology. Let's write it in more academic way. Most people are broadly agree. So we agree, not we are agree, or are broadly agree in punishment. We agree with the in punishment, agree in something. No, we don't say so. So you can say agree with the establishment of severe punishment. So but, instead of but, we could say here, however, or yet, or let's say, despite the fact that, in spite of the fact that, or although, however, controversy is also. So we don't say two words in the same sentence, is and exist, or let's say are and, just made the mistake here about are and agree. So we don't use two words in the same sentence in this order. Controversy also exists which someone is strongly against penalizing or punishment. However, so on the one side, I would say on the one side, not however, because now you are starting to write about the body paragraph. It's not about the continuation of the argument, and it shouldn't be so. So there's no consensus which every person prefers. Let's say which prefers or can prefer penalizing, or you can also say punishing. Most popular tactic for learning. Punishing is the most popular tactic for learning. To learn. So it's the outline of the situation. General works, but parents must be cautious about choosing the type of punishment, the right or proper type of punishment. It must avoid what? It must avoid something including physical or psychological force. In this case, the penalty, okay, it's the penalty. In Azerbaijan, it's penal, but in English, it's penalty or punishment. The penalty can make childhood. Instead of make, I would use here another term like yield or generate. Okay. Or aside from cause, we can say bring about, or lead to. Lead to childhood trauma. Psychologists are unanimously agree. Again, the same issue. we agree, not we are agree. They agree, psychologists, or they are agree or they agree. Just keep this in mind. Psychologists unanimously agree that most of offenders got traumas instead of guides received. Okay, and try to use more academic forms of the vocabulary. And you can also consult to formal words document as well as online dictionaries and so forth. Which has which has connections uh, with their early ages. Parents can damage everything by using the wrong tactic. Another issue is about youngsters' age. It would be better to teach them at an early age. Due to being a child, their character is on the process of their growth, of just growth or development. It's more complicated to teach something to adults than children. After a certain age, again, come on, the adolescent gained their own point and principles about life. An adolescent, because we're not talking about the specific adolescent, instead we're talking about any adolescent. In this case, indefinite article should be embedded here. An adolescent gain. So it's about the ability indeed. Not all adolescents gain their own point. So can gain their own point and principles about life. Express information during the formation uh, can has much more influence. Let's say expressing. So we like to add here the subject by making it this verb gerund. It becomes our new subject. Expressing information during the formation phase can have much more influence. Okay, have the infant have the so why the infant? Which infants you're talking about? If it's general, an infant has, because we're talking about one infant. An infant has the tendency about copying their parents. Tendency to copy. Okay, this tends them to do so. They tend to do something. Tendency to copy their parents. It's the sign of their obedience. So we can say here, in order to replace it, we can say which is the sign of their obedience. Okay, let's go scroll down. A lower choosing methods, all over, you want me all over choosing methods, except penalizing could be better. What do you mean by all over? I cannot understand it. So maybe you'd like to say whichever the chosen method is, maybe all over choosing methods. Let's just make it green. And if you have any explanation on this part, you can ask me in the next lesson. All the choosing methods except penalizing could be better. Despite its aim, kids would be, so instead of kids, we could say the young or children, just children, or minors. Would be unsatisfied. Despite its aim, minors would be unsatisfied about punishment. I consider punishment should be used as a last option. So probably you'd like to say all in all, I don't know. You gotta just tell me. I'm still thinking about it. I consider punishment should be used as a last option. Even on little gifts or small gifts. We generally say small gift. It's is in a is a case in point. These presents inspire them to make right decisions. Right decisions. Okay, nothing else. And this is, I believe, that the last one. It's also on the same. Every year, many languages die out. A group of people considers that. If you talk about the people in general, right? So it becomes considers. If you talk about the group, yeah, that specific group considers. So by the way, you don't have to copy the sentences from the prompt, otherwise it will not be counted. Therefore, try to paraphrase such kind of statements. A group of people considers that this is unnecessary as there are fewer languages in the world, life will be easier. Both benefits and drawbacks can become across in this case. Can be encountered, can be observed. Of course, that's not a problem in this context. There's no doubt that communication between people, so people would be much more and easier. We don't use two ERs simultaneously. Okay, more, easier, much easier. If there had been, so if the first part is would, then the second part will be simple past. Okay, because we're talking about the unreal situation, which is not the reality. So if there, so we can say if there was as well as if there were. In more formal language, we can say if there were, okay, or if I were you, just like that. Or common language. Some people estimate that abolishing languages can help to comprehend people who speak in a different language. But eliminating all languages is certainly impossible. Okay? Complications of learning new languages leads to thinking like it. So try to diversify the language and grammatical structures. Okay, in this way, you'll have more opportunity to draw the attention of the examiner to your work rather than the other people's or your candidates, or in this case, your competitors' work. As a result of travels, again, some people are for decrease in the number of languages in the worldwide. However, now we are talking about the contrasting point, less amount of language, less number of, because it's accountable now. Number of languages makes to build relations between people easy. Makes it easy to build relations between people. It would be better to try another way. So consider learning international language. So this is just something like writing for the journal. However, that's not the case. Therefore, try not to use such kind of instructional statements or rhetorical questions and so forth, which can only be found in the let's say non-academic materials. Okay, it's kind of literary style. So today all day I'm talking. That's why my voice becomes a little bit stranger. So my apologies for that. Consider learning international language. Modern life demands to have language skills from people. Language removal makes some. You mean probably language removal. The noun form is removal. Makes some downsides. Let's say generates or produces some downsides. The way it's written together. Many ancient books, documents, manuscripts So if we have more than two things that are listed, then we need to separate the last one, the last item from the rest at the end. So, and manuscripts were written in old language, in an old language, which data, no, in the old language, which data, because now we're talking about specific language, that died out, right? You can also use here wiped out, or that are not in use, that are not available, or that is unavailable, right? Which died out due to lack of the people who know the language. Some secrets of history are still known. Let's see, who know the language. Some secrets are still unbeknown to global society. If today's languages get lost, it hinders to receive information about our life in future. I consider that let's write here in conclusion versus and both of them are followed by a comma. Okay, try to start the conclusion part in such way, okay, with one of these expressions. And there's so many expressions, example expressions that can be used, for example, to recapitulate, to recap, or although no, above all, such kind of phrases also exist. But some examiners do not adore these ones because they sometimes consider them like an informal vocabulary. Therefore, in conclusion and to conclude, these are some expressions that they unanimously concur upon the use of such expression in the conclusion part of the essay. I consider that we must preserve all languages for historical and cultural issues. We can preserve them without daily speaking. To conclude, we can preserve them. So today we studied sounds. For example, you can say without or sounds. Daily practice. 7 vocabularies, books, and sources are enough. Because we're talking about several items like 7 vocabularies, books, and sources. If we could consider it from that point, okay. Indeed, if we have to say 7 vocabularies, reading books, and writing sources, in that case, R would be true. But in this context, it must be is. 7 vocabularies because the subject here is saving X, Y, and Z. But saving X, saving Y, in that case, it is plural. It is. It, no contractions again. It is the fact that, after this, we don't need here a comma. It's the fact that experts are needed for using. So we're talking about the outcome, to use these sources. In my opinion, daily used languages should be improved day by day for keeping them alive. Finding new words, again, you need to use here not in general but infinitive to keep them alive because this is the final result of the circumstance. To keep them alive. Finding new words, phrases, idioms, and idioms can help to develop and save the language. Okay, the language that's about to disappear or vanish. So my main concern here is that try to use in each conclusion paragraph with start with in conclusion to conclude and so forth. Never start your sentences with and, so, but, and because. Okay, because they can be used within the sentences, but not between the sentences. Okay, so it never started with and, although it might be observable in some IELTS reading passages. And the last thing is that pay attention to the punctuation, the use of comma. Sometimes when it's necessary, you're missing the comma, and when it's not necessary, when you don't have to put comma, then we see that you have the comma. So pay heed, okay? Heed to punctuation. So I hope you can watch this video and take my recommendations and apply to your essays, which can have the positive contribution towards your essay. Thanks for watching.